Welcome to Sad Boys, a podcast about feelings and other things also. I'm Jarvis.
And I'm Jordan. The invasion of Iraq was an unjustified crime based entirely on financial gain. Cope.
Wow. Hot takes.
Trying to get a little political. I'm a little behind the game.
Right.
As far as I know, that's the biggest political story happening right now.
Happened since.
I can't wait till the Sad Boys in 2026 when you talk about our current administration. The takes will be so hot.
And I am, ideally by this point, the pendulum has swung back into reasonable universe.
Right.
Everybody's chill. Everybody's happy. Free healthcare.
It's like
And I'm like,
President
what
Oprah
the
Winfrey.
fuck
Yeah.
is happening? But thankfully, we're not alone.
We're not alone.
Once,
Finally.
we have somebody else on the podcast.
It's been a long time coming.
We've been doing fewer and fewer guests, but people love Lauren Shippen.
Oh,
And we thought,
we all do.
what's the next best thing?
Yeah. What's that? What's it?
It's usually how that goes.
This is like the Ant-Man to Lauren Shippen's Captain America.
It really is.
In the Sad Boy cinematic universe.
Yep.
Briggon Snow is with us.
Briggon joins us. We are in LA. We're technically in Anaheim right now for VidCon.
Anaheim.
And so
She's shouting out Anaheim.
Yeah.
That's good.
Anaheim represent.
Anaheim friends.
And
Can I
Briggon was
pull
kind of
you, these mics weird. You flip that bad boy, see your logo face, and you're going in here.
Anaheim.
So a little face here.
Anaheim.
There we go. Actually, if you just do it to the tail. Anaheim. Make sure we get a three-dimensional Anaheim.
Anaheim.
And now you said you had like a 25-minute prepared speech you wanted to give.
right about like who you are and your dreams and aspirations in the world.
Anaheim.
Why the hell are we in Anaheim, Briggon? Explain.
We just want to get a hotel room, and just like be together, bro out.
That's exactly right. With the acoustics in my
Bro out,
apartment,
with,
are good.
bro out with your toes out. That's all I always say.
Yeah.
Bro out with your toes out. Hotel rooms that we share are a theme in Sad Boys.
And historically, the setting of our best episodes, mostly. Yeah.
I would say so.
Either at Lauren's house or
And
in
then
our
the
hotel room.
streak is broken.
Oh, dang.
So, Briggon, who the hell are you?
I am a fan of you guys. First off,
Little old us.
Yeah. No, I'm an actor in LA. I am on the show The Bright Sessions.
Fantastic show. Fantastic acting. Briggon plays Caleb.
Yes, yeah, the jock empath of the show, and
Which I imagine was just an easy transition for you.
so easy. I mean,
all the sports you do.
all the sports with the
Remind me, which one do you play? The sport?
football in the in the show.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, run me through the logistics of football, which you know intimately.
There's a ball.
Oh, really?
Right, and then your foot's out.
Toes come out.
And that's about it.
You bro out?
Yeah, really, yeah. So it's my knowledge of it.
Speaking of sports, speaking of football, speaking of jocks, today our topic is masculinity.
That might be the best segue we've ever done.
I'm a
Or anyone
professional.
has.
Have you seen the price of my audio equipment?
What else says professional?
Yeah, I
It certainly
have-
isn't quality of content.
I have certainly not. Yeah, now I got nothing else about masculinity. Why don't
Well, when we were throwing around the topic, so the way that we normally find topics with guests is we send them the list of like 5 or so that we think you might find interesting.
Right.
So we sent you a list earlier, and you were kind enough to reply with extreme enthusiasm and great ideas for every single one of them, which only made things harder.
Great.
But it's actually, when we brought up masculinity, we were going through an old paper doc looking for old topics that we brainstormed at the beginning of the show and never got to.
Yeah.
And it's bananas that we've never done masculinity. It's like
Yeah, I'm actually
underpinning of the
surprised.
show.
So for now, there exists in a chest underground somewhere an episode 0 of Sad Boys where we like came up with the name for the show and came up with the logistics. And in that, in order to like vet the idea, we wanted to see if we could list out 20 episode ideas. And one of the first that we mentioned was masculinity, because the whole show, Sad Boys, a comedy podcast about feelings, revolves around it being very difficult to have conversations about your feelings as like two guys.
Yeah.
That was like our experience, and we thought that other people might relate to that. So masculinity felt like an obvious place to start. Here we are, episode 27, and we haven't talked about it yet.
Why do you think? Is there a reason why you guys never touched on it?
Oh, it's completely a lack of organization.
Cool.
That is the life hack to figuring out why something has or has not happened on Sad Boys.
Yeah.
Like, why has an episode come out in 2 weeks? Oh, you see,
Right.
it's our fault.
Yeah. No, it's,
Nothing too complicated.
but if you were my therapist, I would say something about how we were just waiting for the right time and the right place to address such a topic. And that time is now, and that place is Anaheim.
I will say it is partly wanting the right guest and the right environment, and I feel like Briggon's perfect for this topic.
I really do feel like I got the most excited that you were excited about masculinity. And when I thought about guests for this episode, I was like, oh my God, Briggon's the perfect one.
Cool.
And so we're going to get into masculinity and our experiences with it and how we've come to understand what it means to be a man. We're all adult people now. And I think
Legally.
Yeah.
And I believe we all identify as men.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that's a journey. So we'll talk about that. But first, Briggon, we're going to start with you.
Yes.
How was your week?
It was filled with pressure, actually. This was
Tell
a
us.
pressure cooker of a week. I have some projects in development.
Yes.
I've been working on for a while, and there have been some speed bumps in
Right.
getting these things off the ground,
Yes.
and also just speed bumps in terms of collaboration with other people.
Oh, wow. Yeah. One of the most difficult things is
definitely.
coordinating. As you know, this entire meeting was like me changing the time, like back and forth 3 separate times. So yeah, collaborations with people are very difficult.
Yeah, and it was even sort of just a sense of moving from creative to the logistic aspects and sort of the financial and all that stuff. Moving from creative to that just built up a whole lot of pressure and a lot of strain and sort of a lot of just frustrations amongst people. So there's a little bit of having it out a little bit this
Yeah.
week,
Ooh,
and,
very nice. Yeah.
which was not really wanted, but probably needed.
Do you feel like you're good at that kind of conflict, specifically a creative project in which there's some degree of contention? Can you boil it down? Can you settle it?
I feel like I can. Unfortunately, there is an element of I like to have a certain amount of control,
Right.
and I think I flex that a little bit too much sometimes. If like no, it has to be this way, and
Right.
and when I come across and it's actually pretty rare in my collaborative relationships that I come across someone who is equally, if not more, stubborn than I am.
Right.
I really struggle with dealing with that as if I don't know what to do with it. I'm just like, no, this is how it works is you say no at first and then I persuade you and then, then it's so.
Why do you still hold your opinion?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you not hear mine?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of like checking. I think that this week was a lot of pressure and a bit of checking my own ego, which would tie into masculinity. Too,
Yeah, absolutely.
for
Yeah.
But yeah, it was actually a fairly tough week. I'm very happy to be ending it in a bed with you guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
Most
We don't hear
weeks
that
should end
often.
in yeah, most people are like, honestly, this is the worst way I could have ended my week.
A lot of mistakes were made to get me here. You're peaking right now, which is
Yeah.
a shock. Thank God.
But I think that weeks like this that like test us or that are full of conflict teach a lot. You know, like I think that some of the most uncomfortable conflicts have led to some of the biggest like changes and self-realizations in me. Kind of needing to be uncomfortably pulled in a direction or stretched in a direction that I'm not used to. But yeah, I mean, like that's like, I guess, growth, right?
yeah.
Do you think that's something that informed your decision to pursue something creative that is pretty autonomous? Like your channel, for the most part, while you welcome feedback and you welcome script reviews, it can exist with only you.
A little bit, but you know, I really related to what Briggon was saying about like having the vision. Like even when I work with other people or people who are helping me out on something that I'm doing, I often have to remind myself that they are like taking time out of their day and schedule to like be there for me, because it's so easy for me to be. I'm very hard on myself, and I'm very like it takes a lot for me to like let go of parts of my vision. And that is something that is a natural part of the creative process that I'm getting so many more reps in the creative process now that I'm getting better at dealing with things that fall below fall different than the vision.
Is it tougher for you to sort of like, killing your darlings and everything?
Yeah,
is it
yeah.
tougher for you to do that when it is a solitary choice that you have made? Or is it harder when someone is telling you to kill it or trying to persuade you to kill it?
So for me, I think it's definitely harder when someone's persuading me because I need to like find my way there. It's like if in the sitcom where I find out that Jordan's girlfriend is cheating on him and I'm like telling him, but he doesn't want to believe me. And it's a strain on our relationship. Every Disney Channel show has had that episode.
Yeah. And this is theoretically.
This is like a weird time for me to tell you this, but
this is huge news. I have a girlfriend. Oh my god, I have such mixed feelings. I'm excited. I'm confused. I'm annoyed. I'm upset.
Now you're getting it all at once. But like in that, the way that resolves is that you have to come to that realization on your own, and I think that's the experience I have when I'm getting notes from someone. I need to like process them. But what like where I was going with that is that like someone will be helping me and then I'll start getting frustrated because I can't explain why I want something a certain way. I just like know it in my head.
Oh, that's the word when you have. So I am terrible with the elevator pitch or
Right.
So I like things that I'm creating are so clearly in my head, and I think the thing that I'm consistently working on is figuring out a way to explain that to people, because then when I explain it to me, it sounds like I'm a crazy person. I'm like, no, that's not. If I could just like take the image and plop it into your head, then we'd be all set.
Well, that's the problem. The creative project that you own, the one that was ideated entirely in your little brain.
Yeah.
Sorry, not an insult.
It's your very small brain.
Based on the interactions we've had, I'm just guessing. But when it's entirely your baby, you only think in nuance. You don't have broad scale. You don't say to yourself, I'm going to go and do Sad Boys, a comedy podcast about feelings. When somebody asks me what Sad Boys is, before I remember that logline, the first thing I go is like, well, so we'll do an intro, and we'll talk about the week, but that's mainly just to like warm up.
Pen pals.
Do you know pen pals?
So one thing that really reminds me of is a conversation that we've had recently, Jordan, and one thing that I'm just starting to internalize myself, which is, as someone who gets caught up in the minutia, it is really hard for me to remember that I lost my point. Hold on.
Who's caught up in the minutia?
It is. I was caught up in the minutia for a second. Sorry. It's really hard for me to remember that people don't know the vision that I have in my head. So like when I put something out there that doesn't align with the vision, somebody can be like, oh, that was a really cool video you put out. And I was like, yeah, but like in my head, it was falling below expectations.
Yes.
But what people see is what is actually manifested on the page. So, or what's manifested in the actual creation. So they don't see like the cool thing that you didn't manage, that you cut for time. They didn't see the darling that got left out.
Yes.
And you, when you watch it, you're like, oh, but if only, right? And you can almost never have that experience of seeing your own thing or hearing your own thing, experiencing your own thing, as a person who wasn't there the whole time for the creative like sort of process. You can never distance yourself from that vision.
Yeah.
That must be an absolute nightmare for writer-director Ortez.
Oh my God,
You produced this thing from scratch, threw away 1,000 babies.
Oh yeah.
And then here's the result, and it is hundreds and hundreds of professional critics' jobs to point out what I did not do.
Yeah. Oh my God,
I know, I want it, but you don't. They tie
You
it
just
away.
want to point at the pile of babies that are on the floor.
Which historically is never a great argument.
No.
Right. And that's like when you. I'm glad that I'm experiencing this now, and I want to get to a point where I'm like really comfortable with that. I think of it much in the way that I like think of goals. It's like you can have goals, but you can never. It probably shouldn't be like a high resolution, very specific goal, because you can't just host that show you want to host. Maybe that show goes away, or you know what I mean. And getting that now, like distancing myself from the vision, still having the vision, but being comfortable if things like don't align, being comfortable sort of in the gray area of like.
Well, it's funny. I think it works for most things where I try and practice, and it's not easy, but not having a tight grip on things, being open to the sort of like free jazz that comes out of creating, and knowing that it's never going to be, even like life plans, like nothing is ever going to be exactly the way that you want it to be. Like when I moved out to when I was the starry-eyed young dude coming from Maine to move out to LA. I remember
So like last night or
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
As we were walking in, Briggon was just amazed to see a building this tall.
came off a bus with like a hat box. And
You were mugged 8 times before we arrived at the hotel.
man.
A hat box. The year was 1920.
But
I'm just glad you weren't drafted.
Right. He really dodged a bullet there.
but like coming out here, I wanted to be
Bone spurs.
I wanted to be an actor, and that was like, that's what I'm gonna be. And in the 5 years that I've been out here in LA, I found out that I found out my passion is actually storytelling. So in whichever way that takes shape, it's writing, it's producing, it's murdering people and throwing them in the trunk of my car.
Mm-hmm, yeah, totally.
Seamlessly moving on to the next topic.
Yeah.
If we can keep that super straight, it would be so fun to see the comment that's like, did anybody... I'm a very eagle-eyed listener.
1720, I'm pretty sure he's admitted to murder. Speaking of that free jazz, like there's an improv like principle that I think of, which is like you're not supposed to write an improv, and writing is what it's called when you're building the idea for how things should go in your head. Mm-hmm. Because what happens when you do that is you build this vision that cannot possibly be realized on stage. Because I walk out with Jordan and I'm like, hey bro, and I'm like, he's my brother now, and we've got this long storied history. And he's like,
what do you mean, brother? We're on the moon, and I'm a dog.
And now we've both created these clashing visions, and it's already a bad scene. Whereas, like in the
I don't know about that. Actually, I'm super interested in
this. This is the exception that proves the rule. Unfortunately, we did just come up with a sick idea.
Yeah,
Key and Peele, watch out.
But in those situations, like it's a clash of visions. But if instead someone just puts one thing out into the world, and the other person listens and reacts to that, and kind of lets it flow freely, then you get a much more cohesive, a much more comprehensible and good thing usually, because people feel like they're being heard. And
this is actually a super interesting time to be talking about this, because myself and Briggon just recorded something quite recently. Haven't really publicized what it is yet. It's coming in the near future, but I'm very excited about it. And it's improv heavy, I think is fair to say.
Yes.
Actually, screw it. I'm just going to say exactly what it is, because I know the show's going to be good. Scoop Troop, get out your pens.
I just cut back to that serious face.
We are launching a Dungeons and Dragons podcast in the very near future. I just edited down the first couple of episodes. And the interesting thing about this, and why when you bring up writing, I have such an internal conflict, is because obviously, as the DM, Briggon is one of the 3 PCs, player characters.
You're the direct message of
I'm the direct message. I slide into the world of Terithia.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I slide into the world of Terithia, and I write out these scenarios, these universes, these encounters is my main focus. Like what combat could happen here, what trade may take place here, what argument may take place here. And the problem is that it is impossible to write those scenarios without also internally or externally writing a solution. The paper doc that I use is it's like 25,000 words.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of bullet points under every encounter that says potential resolutions.
Yeah.
Briggon figures out the puzzle and listens to the message.
Yeah.
Lauren activates her latent magical power and discovers that this was the mother the whole time. Whereas what can actually happen, which did happen in our play, was that in the latest episode, we all go to we fuck the podcast. We went and got drunk at the tavern. No, we all went to a tavern in game, and I had written out a dozen potential scenarios. 2 of them took place, and we recorded for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that's half the magic. That's why I'm not writing a narrative show. That's why it's a D&D podcast.
Right.
But I struggle with it in some cases. I'm so happy with where we ended up, but every now and then I would have to fight away this urge to go. And you suddenly look closely at a brick that's pointing out further in the wall than the other ones are.
Wait, was there a brick?
Well,
was it a brick tavern?
Yeah, sorry, it was just a brick.
Oh, cool.
I think it's really fun when DMs do that, because they're leading you to something, and then it's the job of the players to go, yeah, fuck bricks, let's just go back to the tavern. And then you just like, because it really is, you have to play with that, and you have to like keep everyone on their toes.
Yeah, I think you were good about, because when I said that, I told a friend that I was doing this, and the first question he asked was, is the DM, does he lead you, or does he just let it happen? And I was like, I think he just let us go wherever we wanted to go, which was really cool.
I think it went really, really well. And one of the reasons is that because it's a show starring exclusively creators and people that enjoy writing, people that enjoy producing, I believe all of whom either produce or have produced podcasts in the past, there's a narrative instinct. Like everybody on the show thinks to themselves, well, if I do this, would I put that in a scene? Not just, I present like, a surly man walks up behind you and pushes you on the shoulder. And then Lauren just goes, I leave. It's like, well, no, that's not going to happen. Lauren is going to invite conflict. She's going to invite what would sound the most interesting. And I've definitely, during the writing period, which was about 2 weeks, I definitely reconciled with the idea of, well, do I just tell them what to do and make them feel like it was their own choice, or do I let them make their own choice?
I had a question about, so in that sort of creative process, because I know Lauren on the Bright sections, the actors, like we've brought stuff to her attention of like, oh, we'd love to do this, or what about this idea?
Right.
And before we recorded, it was like that week, I was so terrified because I'd never played D&D before, and I wanted to like get my character down. And I sent you like all these sort of like ideas on where I'm from and who this character is. And so when you have created a world and you have an idea for a thing, and you invited all of us to sort of have a say in it, but there is sort of
when you actually do it.
Yeah, well,
I was just trying to be polite.
So the question is like when a person sort of plays in your sandbox, is that a good feeling? Is there a bit of resistance? How does that sort of shake out for you?
I think in our case, it was nothing but positivity. But that's because what you suggested was good.
Okay, cool. Right.
There is absolutely a world where you suggest, okay, I want my character. Okay, he's got to have gills. Anyway, he's got to have gills. That's established.
But they're not gills. They're just a bunch of guys named Gills.
I have an entourage of
He needs
gills.
several gills, which he does use to breathe.
They carry a series of oxygen
They take
tanks.
a breath, go to his mouth, and
Right. It's true.
Roll for advantage. And to bounce the question over to Jarvis and Briggon. Jarvis, you shared a lot of scripts with me in the past, and I know, Briggon, you've had some creative conflicts this week. I assume around this area, sharing one thing with another person, them disagreeing or fighting back. Does it ever deter you from wanting to do that in the future, or do the pros greatly outweigh the cons? And how are the prawns?
The prawns are lacking in gills, which I...
Which is always a pain.
Yeah,
So I should mention, you always share your scripts with the aliens from District 9.
I was gonna say I always share them with a shrimp cocktail. No, it doesn't really discourage me. Really getting other. I think I'm a big believer in like my vision and stuff like doesn't really matter. What matters is like how the whole process of like having a vision, creating something, putting it out into the world, and then having the world react to that. Like that's the whole process. And having other folks like weigh in on things at earlier stages is just a way to sort of get some early feedback on that cycle. So, for example, if I have like a really offensive joke or something, it's like, oh, this is going to offend a lot of people. It's really good to hear that, like, have a canary in the coal mine, rather than to like lay it out for everyone. And then
own a coal mine,
right? I own a coal mine. It's where I keep all of my prawns. That's a very weird setup.
They actually aren't great at warning me about danger. Yeah, canary might have been the way to go.
Yeah, and somewhere with water would have been good for this.
Actually, they're great at not telling me that there's danger as soon as I put them down. I die.
So what I'm saying is sending my scripts to friends is a lot like putting prawns in a coal mine. Yeah.
Okay.
They really just immediately die, and then I never put out anything. Cool. Yeah. But no, just generally, what I was saying seriously is just that, it's just a way to get early indicators of how a wider audience might react, which is important because oftentimes the reason I'm creating art is for an audience or to communicate with an audience or to share.
I'm with you on that for sure.
Yeah. Want to hear a seamless segue?
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Little joke. My seamless segue is... Well,
you can. This podcast is sponsored by Seamless. Seamless.com, a website where you can order food.
Please. Oh my God.
That's a seamless segue. Okay,
all segues.
Segues.
Yeah.
My seamless segue is conflict is a thing I often associate with masculinity.
Yes.
Kind of a validating point.
And it does kind of bring us back to Briggon's week as well.
Briggon.
Yeah.
Do you think you deal with conflict well? And is it something that you associate with masculinity?
I think I deal. I don't like this actually. I deal with conflict well. I think in terms of the purposes of protecting myself and my argument, I feel like I am not an entirely fair person to get in conflict with. I think something just came up recently where and this has been throughout my life, that I tend to become a little bit more verbose and articulate a little bit more. It's as you know, when people online, when they have an argument, it's almost like they have a thesaurus on the other tab. They just want it to be the most flowery stuff.
Right.
I sort of, ever since I was like a kid, would just try and be very clear, and it comes across as condescending.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I do equate conflict to masculinity, but I'm super aware of it because of my own relationship with masculinity. So I think in sort of how I approach conflict, even through that condescension, which I am super embarrassed about, right. I feel like I recognize the opposing argument and try and be empathetic and try and be less about the chest pounding guy, like, let's take this outside or sort of going to something stupid and really trying to like understand the person. Yeah. Which is interesting that we equate that with femininity and that's
empathy. Yeah. The traditionally, and using traditionally, very actively, I mean, traditional perception of femininity is that you are welcoming and accommodating.
Yes.
Traditional masculinity is that you fight for your belief and your perspective to the grave.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's zoom out a little bit. I want to talk
the frame too close.
Yeah. Let's zoom out the camera a little
Thanks
bit.
for listening to Sad Boys. This was the best joke in the show, so we're just going to stop doing it.
Anyway, let's go back to that Seamless segue. Seamless.com, where you can order food.
Seamless.com/sadboys.
They no relation. It's another podcast.
So you can order a sad child.
So zooming out a little bit, like, how do you think that traditional views on masculinity and what it means to be a man, in quotes, in heavy quotes, how has that affected the way that you carry yourself in the world? And I guess maybe I'm curious about Jordan, and then I guess we can go down.
Yeah. So for the longest time, I self-identified as a non-competitive person. And there were two reasons for this. One, I grew up as the only child of a wonderful mother, Joy Cope, shouted out every single episode.
Absolutely.
It's the closest thing we have to AdRev. Every time I say my mum's name, she sends me a nice message.
Joycope.com/sadboys. She's a sponsor of this episode.
Shout out to Joy Cope. Check out her Seamless page. But she raised me to at least attempt to always find an amicable solution. Not by any means to say that I'm good at it, or was at the time, but I always drifted away from competition because it felt like the exact opposite of that. It felt like me saying, no, I believe this thing and I'm this way, and you can't be that way because I wish to be this way. And that was, I guess, a traditionally not particularly feminine way of acting. And
right.
I wanted to identify more with femininity. I took pride in self-identifying as a effeminate person. I had no problem with that. And then as I got older and I started to identify competition less as the binary opposite of accommodation and instead just like a path to being accommodating and a path to being empathic.
Yeah.
That was really around my adulthood. I'd say that's the first time I really started identifying with traditionally male ideologies, like using competition to invite information. Like if you come to me and we that improv example is perfect. If we're trying to do a scene and then you say to me, no, I'm trying to do this scene, I suddenly understand why it happened. I'm like, we had a small amount of conflict.
Yeah.
It floated ideas that were otherwise boiling under the surface.
Right.
And now we can take action based on that information.
Yeah.
But for a very long time, and I'm not just talking conversation, I'm also talking sports. I'm talking video games. I liked single player video games. I liked solo sports like swimming.
Yeah.
Like anything that invited somebody else to feel like they were better than or dominating me. Yeah. Just like, hey man, we can just both be.
Yeah.
And as I get older, less and less. I think I'm moving towards a more competitive personality.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
How about you, Briggon?
I think it's interesting for me because as a gay man, there's sort of stereotypes and things thinking that. So there's a femininity to that. So then you would assume that sort of the accommodating aspects of femininity are then intrinsic to a gay person.
Right.
So I consistently ask myself, I'm like, if I was straight, would I be as empathetic as I am right now? So that aside, I think my relationship with masculinity has been so much of my life, actually interesting, beginning of my life in absolute overcompensation and embracing of it.
Interesting.
To fool everyone, to try and fool everyone.
Specifically as a reaction to your sexuality.
Exactly. And then post coming out has been, my relationship to masculinity has been in almost, I say, direct opposition to those traits. So getting to a place where I'm no longer trying to pretend to sort of play the man game and sort of pass amongst my school friends or anything. I'm now living in a place where it's like, no, I mean, I want to understand people. I don't want people to feel shitty. I also don't, I don't take any pleasure in inviting conflict and then pushing someone down with it. That which I see.
Some do. Yeah, we should say. It's absolutely a moment of elation and power is when you are the better man.
It's so interesting because I remember in college I'd be like at a party, like at one of those crummy basement parties,
and solo cups and all.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember one specific instance where I was hanging with some friends and talking, and then a fight broke out in the far corner of this basement. And my reaction to it was, we should probably get out of here. I don't want this. And a friend that I was with, who I would say is pretty stereotypically masculine, almost to a point of where it was just sort of comical. He, without trying to understand the circumstances, ran and jumped into the fray. And it was the perfect example of like sort of the two differences where I was like, no, I don't know why we're seeking out conflict.
I hate how much I love that.
You just jumping into it.
Fucking sick I think that is. It's like he lit a cigar, swallowed it whole, did a backflip, and landed on them with both biceps.
Yeah, one hand holding an old fashioned,
the other hand spraying himself with Old Spice,
while objectifying a woman on the way down
on Twitter with his butt.
Yeah,
but so much of it seems like what's the term, like performative masculinity,
absolutely.
where it's just like it's this fear of coming across as weak because how fucked up is it that femininity is seen as weak in society and masculinity is seen as strength.
Well, the danger zone, and I'd be curious on your perspective on this because it's something that I've thought about, but as a perspective of a straight man, I feel unqualified to contextualize, right? But something that I constantly wrestle with is the fact that masculinity, and I instinctually believe this, it's so frustrating. I know it's not right. Yeah. But masculinity is seen as true neutral. All things should gravitate around masculinity is just being rational and keeping things together and fighting for what's yours. That's why we have things like, that is a gay sounding voice.
Well, that's the patriarchy, I feel like
100%.
It's the power structures assigning the norm.
But it's very bizarre. I mean, when I was younger, I did wrestle with the idea of like, why do like some gay people just sound like girls? And it's because we aren't designed to sound like this only. Regular.
We're performing.
That's not what normal is.
Here's an interesting thing too. So you have your whole life. I'm projecting on you now. You've identified as straight.
Correct.
So the way that you walk, the gait of your walk, the way that you talk, the way that you stand and present yourself. That is, when we're kids, we're moving around and we're not aware of these things. As you get older, you put on, because these sort of societal pressures or constructs, you put it on. I have something that I wrestle with consistently where the way that I talk and the way that I walk, I tend to, I would say I walk in a masculine way.
Right.
I don't know if this is intrinsically who I am and how I was naturally walking, or if I chose to walk that way and talk that way to go against my sexuality.
So I identify with that with regard to the way that I speak and always being told that I like talk white. And that's like, I don't know if I talk this way because of just how I wanted to be, or if it's because I decided to take things from society that were like different than what was around me. Like if I like, I think the way I talk is based on like what I heard on television rather than like the people around me. Yeah. And did I, when I was younger, like devalue the people who were around me in favor of something that felt more correct that was on, like that was being shown to me on television? one thing that so responding to my own question about the effective masculinity and some of the things that both of you said, I actually have had like no, like Jordan and I are similar in this, like we just no dads in the picture for the most part.
No new friends, no dads.
Yeah.
OGs only.
And so it's like I only had, I was only raised by women, and I think that gave me I didn't feel inundated with the masculinity from anyone who's very close to me. It was just like sort of at school and in pop culture and stuff. And I think that the playful term to describe like how I sort of identify is beta male, but even to say that is like kind of a joke, right?
It's buying into the
it's
dichotomy.
buying into that, and so like but the thing for me is I actually am very competitive, and when people like, I feel like I'm trying to be emotional and understanding, and when someone doesn't meet me there, I snap into, I will now destroy you.
That's the thing. You're not playing by the fair rules.
Exactly.
So now I'm going to go to the thing that I don't want to go to.
Yeah. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Yeah. It's like, oh, you want to be hyper masculine and mean. It's like, oh, if you want to do, it's like people would pick fights with me, and I would just like find a way to like sort of hurt them in a way that didn't involve me fighting, because I like wanted to rise above. Yeah. Or it's like, I think I've given this example on the show before, but like some kid like shot me with a little like rubber band thing, and I like it was
killed his family. I personally think it's too far, but kind of impressive for a 5-year-old kid.
Yeah. No, it was like one of those things where they like stapled a thick piece of paper and then shot it with a rubber band, and so it would cause like welts on people, and they hit me in the eye, and I was like, I'm going to get you expelled.
My lawyer will be here in the morning.
Yeah. It's like, because my options are to fight you, and I have too much of a future to care about to get into that shit, so I'm just going to use the rules to destroy you. And then it's like, but I just want to be the happy-go-lucky guy, and it's like, if we could just be normal, if we could just, you know what I mean?
He frames the kid's dad for money laundering.
I had the tools for this, and I didn't want to use force lightning.
Yeah,
but you made me do
that's
this.
exactly what it feels like. It's like, I really wish I didn't have to do this, but you've given me no choice.
You should have just assumed I could.
So then, going off of that, because that's interesting, because I so often have to check myself with ego and pride, where I see conflict and I see myself trying to be the understanding, more empathetic person. And then what that does is I end up judging that person and feeling better than that person.
Right.
So there's an element of like, do you deal with that when you go through it? Like, do you have to sort of check yourself and be like, oh, I'm being a little arrogant here?
I think so. I think what I have instilled in me, like the respectful actions and things that like were told to me by my parents, like when I was like being respectful and always saying please and thank you, and like opening doors for people, because I grew up in the South. And so when somebody, like whenever something feels in conflict with that like sort of moral operating like sort of procedure, then that's when I'm just like, like I thought we were on the same page here. Like, for example, if someone, you're like carrying a coffee, and then like someone stops prematurely ahead of you and like wasn't paying attention to where you were spatially, or wasn't paying attention to their own actions, then stops, and then you or like moves their arm and hits your thing, and then we spill hot coffee on them. I spill hot coffee on them, and they turn around to me and they're like, "What are you doing, you idiot?" And it's like, okay, now I'm angry. Because
you failed the social contract. And are fining me.
Because I'm always apologizing first for things that I'm not at fault for, just to like make people feel good, because that's like my natural like thing.
And you're coming from a place of, I would gladly take a couple hits to my pride to skip a conflict.
Exactly, because I'm not, because I don't think that conflict is often necessary. I want to avoid it at all costs, but only if I think conflict avoidance can be really harmful. And so I want to say specifically that when I'm avoiding conflict, it's like avoiding things that like don't matter, and not trying to like elevate like a situation for no reason.
Briggon, can I ask you?
Yeah.
And feel free to say no. You won't get paid for this episode, but feel free. What would you say is the most toxic, traditionally masculine personality trait or tradition that you take part in, that you feel most self-conscious about, or that you would like to rid your body of, if possible?
I would say I am quick to anger.
Classic.
Very quick to anger, and it's something that I've dealt with since I was a little kid. I was an angry little kid, but it's anger. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough to talk about. It's actually that's probably the hardest appraisal that I have of myself. Is probably how quick I go to anger and how acutely I can employ that anger to destroy.
No. This is your Sith lightning.
I fully identify with that. I'm like, I wish I didn't. I hold back so much that when it like crosses the threshold, it's like I actually have had, all of the receipts. I have all the tools in a shed like to destroy you with, and like the lock is just right there.
Yeah. And you opened it. I didn't want to use it.
Here it goes. There goes my hand. Sorry.
Like if Bruce Banner doesn't Hulk out for 5 years, it's going to be a pretty destructive event.
Yeah.
Just don't bait the beast on that kind of thing.
So I have a question that's kind of maybe a question we can wrap up on, because I think that one thing that always confused me is how early some of these like behaviors that force us into like the I guess the gender roles and like the masculinity versus like femininity like things, it like all seems to come about when you're a kid. And I remember, because I didn't want to play the game of like being hyper masculine, and if people wanted to fight, I didn't want to fight. Like we talked about this before, it would be like, hey, someone said they wanted to fight you, and I was like, what? Like I have no bones to pick with anybody. And
dude, what's your source on this? Who told you that they wanted to fight me? Can you get a couple different perspectives?
Exactly. And so, but the thing is, if you don't play by that game, if something is coming from a masculine place and then you say no thanks, then the immediate place they go is like, you're gay.
Well, it's you're not playing within the masculine contract that everyone's playing, so thereby you are less than.
I want to what I want to understand is like where do you think that comes from children who like have no context whatsoever on these things? Like why? Like I don't know, how do we get to a place where like being gay is an insult? Like because that's something I never understood. And even that like people so much want to other someone else. So like why, like how did everyone get into the group think of like masculinity? Is that like a evolutionary thing? Is that like, I don't know.
I mean, it's classically it's parents, right? A lot that would be the go-to.
Right.
Though the thing is that so often when people say, oh, my parents made me this way, or my parents did this thing to me, what they're actually talking about is something far more insidious than like direct education.
Right.
It could be you going home, putting on a pink t-shirt and your dad calling you gay. It could be that.
Yeah.
But more often, like in a household like mine, for example, where there was no stigma around how I wanted to self-identify or what gender roles I traditionally associate with, it came from, well, largely pop culture, but also largely, well, I see people around me and my mum does these things and she's a girl.
Yeah. Right.
And somebody told me at some point that I should be. Another big factor of it, let me know if either of you relate to this at all. The number one thing a kid wants is an affect, right? They want a thing to self-identify by.
Yeah,
right.
I'm the kid with lots of allergies, and it's like that's not cool.
That was
when you say that in like in elementary school, it's almost like, oh, you're defined. Great.
Yeah,
you are now a little bit closer to an
I was
adult.
called Snot Nose. Yeah. That was my nickname.
You are again, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Snot Nose. That was me.
But like, self-identifying is basically what a child exists to do.
Yeah.
It walks around and it goes, okay, my voice sounds like this. I walk like this. I stand like this. I eat these things. I don't eat these things. And the second somebody is able to say, who knows who starts it, but there's that one first domino kid whose dad happened to call him gay one time, and then he comes in and goes like, you walk like a girl, and then that kid goes, no way, you talk like a girl, and then it just starts spreading like a virus.
Yeah. How do you think about this, Briggon? Like, how do we stop it early?
How do you specifically stop it?
Honestly, yes. I mean, the crazy thing about this is like we could talk about this for a week and still not,
and we will
crack the service.
Call our 24/7. This is a telethon.
Yeah, there you go.
Hard cut to a week later. You both have beautiful beards. I have nothing. I have like slightly longer hair.
This topic is it could go on forever.
So, I mean, I think what it comes down to is, okay, if we're talking about things that kids need to sort of be their identifier, I think so much of why we have kids, frustrated young men who are doing the most grotesque and evil things imaginable is because there is either a lack there of grace and acceptance for these boys to just be who they are or what they are, and a force of I'd say their peers, their family, and even right down to pop culture in terms of, I mean, I remember watching Nickelodeon growing up, and they were very clearly like girls commercials, and it was like Easy Bake, and it was very gentle and beautiful music, and the guys were like Crossfire and like all this sort of like insane stuff.
Permanently injure your sister.
Yeah. So it all comes from a very sort of like, men are intense, women are gentle, and when you're a kid and you don't know who the fuck you are, but all you're getting at all times is what your peers are telling you you should be, what your family's telling you should be, what culture is telling you should be. I think what we really, really need to do, and I think it's a generational thing, it's going to take a very long time. But first off, when it comes to pop culture, we need to be showing more empathetic boys, empathetic men in the content that we're showing our young men,
and the benefits therein. I think a really common unfortunate consequence of showcasing empathy in pop culture is that it's often associated with a martyr.
Yes,
like I was fearless enough to embrace the feminine,
and it's so interesting too, where it's I think we need to be allowing them to embrace the feminine while also not vilifying the positive masculine aspects of there's masculine elements of protection, of caring for others. That isn't exclusive to the male gender. It's female too. I think we all have, it's a spectrum of that. I think we should absolutely vilify the toxic aspects of masculinity, which is what we've been talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we should prop up the good stuff and showing how it is no different from the positive parts of femininity. It's just what makes us who we are.
I think about like much in the way that our politics have become very polarized. I think that we've always lived, or at least as far as I understand, we've always lived in this world of like polarized, like masculinity and femininity.
Binary.
Yeah, there's a binary. Yeah, there's a binary. And when in reality, like I feel like it's so new. Not like it's not new historically, but it's like new as a society today for us to be talking about like the spectrum of this. And I think that what we might be experiencing now is just like the downstream effects of hyperpolarization of the masculine and the feminine. Like the blue is boys and the pink is girls, like that kind of stuff. When like I've seen that happen in a couple of like really interesting ways that I won't go deeply into, but one example is like with personal computers. Like one big contributor to men being really like overrepresented in computer-based fields is because when personal computers were like becoming a consumer like product, they had to be put in stores like Sears and shit. Or even simpler, let's say the Nintendo, they had to make a choice. Like video games aren't for boys. We had toy aisles that were separated by boys and girls, and someone had to make a decision.
You have to put the puzzle piece somewhere.
To put it somewhere, and then that can be exacerbated into it just is a vicious cycle that like continues to promote.
And then it makes you afraid. I mean, the fact that we have like shampoos that have to be slate gray because a guy's afraid to buy a bottle that might be like pale, like lavender or pink.
It's Dr. Pepper 10, where the ad literally goes, "It's not for women."
Yeah.
The fuck is that about?
The Yorkie chocolate bar, only in the last 5 years in the UK, has disassociated itself from "it's not for girls" with a picture of a female cartoon figure X'd out. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Tastes great, unfortunately. So, it's a really good bar.
We've covered a lot here. Like we said,
we fixed it.
Yeah. I mean, TBH. But like this is a very deep topic, and I think it's really important to understand how we got here, both in our own individual lives and like as a society.
And we should also emphasize that despite the fact that it is overwhelmingly toxic, it's not inherently bad to self-identify with masculine traits.
I am so proud to be a man.
Yeah,
I am so proud to be a man, and that doesn't.
You're swift as a coursing river,
exactly,
with all the force of a great typhoon.
I would say getting in touch with you was difficult because of your moon-like.
Absolutely. No, I think it's. I'm proud. Are you proud to be a man?
I think so. I identify as a man, and I'm not like ashamed to identify as a man, but I often feel like I need to. I don't need to stand up for men. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what I do want to be is like an example of the power of having characteristics that are traditionally feminine. Just like saying you don't have to be like 100% masculine features, all or nothing.
Yeah.
In order to be
Just be a human.
be a human. Yeah. Just be a person. Yeah.
Hey, be a man if you want to.
Or don't.
Doesn't really fucking matter,
Yeah.
to be honest.
We do have fun.
Just don't be shitty.
Just don't
be
universally.
Yeah.
If you don't, if you take anything away from this episode, just don't be shitty.
Yeah.
Or if you do it well.
Are we cuddling after this, or?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Of course, are you kidding me?
Cool.
So thanks for joining us so much, Briggon.
Yeah.
Briggon, I loved listening to you on this episode. This is Jordan. I always listen to the show.
Oh, hey, Jordan.
Right. Reaching out. Ring, ring.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, loved you on the show. Wondering how I can get even more Briggon Snow in my life. Preferably, I don't know, online.
No, I'm a dog on a moon.
Oh, well, wait, no,
wow.
because I was going to be the dog on the moon.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You've ruined the sketch.
Sorry. No, you can find me at Briggon on Instagram and at Briggon Snow on Twitter, and you can find me on the Bright Sessions, which is a really cool podcast that I'm proud of.
Yes,
You got
indeed.
Briggon on Insta.
Yeah, I got Briggon on Insta.
Cool, man.
Just like
What's my medium going to be? We got Jarvis on Twitter, Briggon on Insta. I'm really going to take on the kick market pretty soon.
Yeah.
Excited about that.
you're Jordan.
Signed up for Vero.
Yeah, you're Jordan on Vera, and on what was that one other dead social network? Hello or something? I don't know. Jordan,
Yo.
where? I'm just gonna do the socials now. If you want to talk to the Sad Boys, we ain't got time for this. Sad Boys Pod on all the places, and our email is sadboyspod@gmail.com. Website is sadboys.com. Hit us up. Send us a pen pal. We'll read those on our next no guest episode.
Mm-hmm. I want extra pen pals for this episode, by the way, because I feel like there are a lot of follow-up questions and points on this topic, and I want to hear them.
Yeah. Thanks again, Briggon, for joining us. And we always end every episode of Sad Boys with a particular phrase.
And we're currently working through a series of different musical genres.
Yes.
In which we sing the particular phrase.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
familiar with this phrase, correct?
It's we love you and we're sorry.
And we're sorry.
We love you, and we're sorry.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thanks so much, Briggon.
Oh, so great.
So much fun.
You get that?